Ubisoft's fall from grace has been well documented in recent years, what with the complete disregard of an entire country's history and culture, and their stubborn adherence to a political ideology that is rapidly falling out of favour with the general populace. Anytime Ubisoft comes up in conversation or in a video or article, I completely lose interest unless it's something I can laugh at. So when word of a new game made by 30 ex-Ubisoft developers at a fledgling studio reached my ears with absolutely sky-high reviews from people who the modern gaming audience hate, I had to see what all the fuss was about. Now that I've finished it, I can finally answer if this could be the saving grace of Western gaming, or if it is just more mediocre shite from an industry in freefall. I'm TSM, and I finally played Clair Obscur Expedition 33. In a world where the oldest age decreases every year, we find Expedition 33, a team of men and women with only 1 year left to live who leave their home of Lumiere to take down the supposed architect of their tragedy, the Paintress. We follow Gustave, Maël, Lune, Ciel, Verso and Monoko as they travel across the world to save those they have left and to allow those younger than themselves to live a life longer than is currently destined for them. Does that sound intriguing? Because that only scratches the surface of this game. Expedition 33 is an amazing tale set in a tragically beautiful and beautifully tragic world. A narrative that kept me gripped from the gut-wrenching opening to the heartbreaking close. A story of love and loss, of grief and joy, life and death. It is unforgiving in its blows and unapologetic in the themes it chooses to cover, constantly asking the player what they would do if they were thrown into the scenario that our protagonists find themselves in. All of this works in the game's favour. Sandfall Interactive has chosen to treat the audience like adults, and that is something we haven't seen from a Western developer in what feels like years. The story being told never throws a wink at the audience, begging them to buy into it and accept that the world exists. It never holds your hand and wraps you in cotton wool to censor you from hard-hitting topics that need to be discussed in the modern world. It does all this without feeling like it's beating you over the head with a modern-day flagpole of politics. Sandfall chose to prioritise telling the best story possible, with the only regards being to respect the audience's intelligence and that we can handle these kinds of discussions. All of this was written by a former private equity investor. Remember that these guys broke away from Ubisoft and what happened to the quality of their games once they did. I have found the talent and the pedigree they once held, and it's over at Sandfall. The first thing you'll notice before even pressing a button to continue is that the OST for this game is breathtaking. I think I can safely say that Expedition 33 has quite possibly the most emotional and beautiful soundtrack I have ever heard, ranging from melancholic piano and strings to French opera to hard rock that underscores some of the game's most intense boss fights. Lorient Testard composed a score worthy of every single accolade that's being hurled its way. His use of different styles and instruments, they blend together to form a testament to composition. Combined with the vocals of Alice Duport-Pesser, and we have the soundtrack of all soundtracks, in my opinion, better than any Final Fantasy, Hogwarts Legacy, and even The Witcher. Even more amazing considering Sandfall found Testard on SoundCloud. The next thing you'll take note of once the game starts is that this is a graphical wonder to the eye. Environments are detailed and stunning to behold. The world consists of an overworld map that you traverse, and individual levels that allow for a greater sense of scope and scale. Each area feels unique, and travelling through these gorgeous levels to reach the next amazingly rendered cutscene is an experience in itself. Combined with the previously mentioned score, and you'll find yourself just staring at these environments, letting the score and ambient sounds just wash over you. One of the biggest complaints with Western gaming in recent years is character design, through both physicality and emotion, never allowing each gender to be itself, and they have to either be body positive or androgynous. Thankfully, This is not the case here. Gustav and Verso are lean, strong, and agile, while Mael, Lune, and Ciel are graceful and flowing. And that design philosophy extends into the way they move in combat and the way they are in cutscenes. The men show occasional closed emotions without being abrasive, showing their true selves through minor movements or inflections. The women are strong without being girl bosses, yet are allowed to be vulnerable and feminine. Voice talents only support the designs of the characters and never take away from them. Whether it's Andy Serkis's growl as the menacing Renoir, Charlie Cox as the reserved, comical and caring Gustav, Ben Starr brings layers of gravitas that gives Verso the suave exterior that masks a man just tired and broken. Jennifer English provides the delicate and emotional Mael with laughter and tears of equal weight. Rich Keeble brought a much needed comedy to cut the tension with his performance of Monoko. I could keep going with Kirsty Ryder as Lune or Charlotte Nix's Ciel, but I think I've said enough to get the point across that there was not one performance that fell flat for me, and all had times to shine, and they did. While it may be the case that certain characters are indeed the narrative focus, these guys aren't just supporting characters. They are pillars that help raise the game higher, each having rich and personal backstories. The most tragic for me was Ciel. Learning that she lost both her husband in an accident unrelated to any Gommage, and her unknown unborn child in a suicide attempt hit really hard. Linking back to performances, the tragedy is sold perfectly and it makes you feel for these characters. But you won't know about it unless you go looking, and you're incentivized to do so. This is what makes this game's depth so delicious and intoxicating. You want to know more, so you actively search for more meaning and lore, and you will find it in spades. Now let's talk about combat. The game is the perfect love letter to the turn-based RPGs of the late 90s and early 2000s, but with a little bit of extra spice thrown in. If I had to sum the combat up in one sentence, it would be Dark Souls and Final Fantasy X's love child. Rewarding when you hit that sweet spot and punishing when you cock it up. Each battle consists of a party of 3 on your side, unless the group is split up for whatever reason. Each character and enemy takes turns attacking, and how often depends on how fast your characters are in their stats. The more agility you have, the more often you can punch a monster in the face. Each battle can include the standard RPG run of buffs, debuffs, weaknesses and resistances, and it's your job to figure out and keep track of what is most effective. There's no cheat sheet or scam page in this game. You need to learn what moves are best through trial and error. Combat will also test your reactions and concentration through the dodge, parry and counter mechanics. The game will give you a hint of what's best to use and when to use it through either an audio or visual cue. Keep your wits about you and you can get through the whole game without taking a single hit of damage, but mess up and you'll see a game over screen. Much like the story side of the game, it doesn't hold your hand. You are told how to do something once, and then you're thrown in at the deep end and expected to get it done. Party composition is up to personal preference for the most part. No character necessarily falls into any RPG archetype, with the exception of, I'd say, Lune as the mage. But it's their unique abilities and gimmicks that provide consideration when choosing who you take into battle. My go-to team of 3 was Verso, Ciel and Lune. The weapon Verso had equipped allowed for an extra turn after a basic attack once per turn. Lune was all in on getting all the required elements for big number damage, and Ciel was about maximizing her critical hit run to keep enemies taking more damage from her Twilight form and alternate attacks. Monoko's fun gimmick is that he can turn into nearly any enemy you have previously defeated with him in the party. Each attack or support move does different things, and you need to work around his mask wheel for extra effects. Mael is a fencer and can switch stances that alter outgoing damage and incoming damage. She's all about switching those stances around to best suit the needs of the moment, or you can do what I did, which is focus on one stance and strategize around that. The last thing I'll mention is that when your chosen 3 go down, it isn't game over. Your remaining 2 members can hop in for you for a last stand, and it's a great way to ramp up the feeling of urgency and desperation on a hard encounter while also not losing a fight right away. Now, while I have gushed about a load of aspects of the game, and I stand by all of my statements, it's beautiful to look at, brilliant to listen to, fun to play, and entertaining to watch, but there is one thing we do need to discuss. And this is spoiler territory here for the end of the first act, so you've been given your warning. If there is one thing I need to critique, it's a narrative choice. Not that it happens, but when the developers had it happen. You may have noticed through talking about the combat and such that I failed to mention Gustav. That is due to his death at the end of the first act. Gustav dies and is replaced with Verso after he swoops in to save Maëlle from Renoir. His death does add narrative weight, and I couldn't believe that he was gone for a solid hour, thinking, oh no, we'll find a way to bring him back, but no, he's gone. I do, however, think it was a mistake placing it here, because instead of it feeling like something like Aerith from Final Fantasy VII, you know, a valued party member who we lose at a critical part of the story, I can't help but now feel that Gustav is instead a placeholder for Verso. I think it would have been better if Verso did arrive in time to save both Maëlle and Gustav, have Gustav around for a little bit longer, and have him die at the old Lumiere mansion instead of Noko. We wouldn't need to change much, and we get to see some fun dynamics between him and Verso before Renoir has his way. We can have the scene where they bury Gustav before the Paintress, and that will be a fresher and more open wound that fuels both the characters and the player, as a desire for revenge is greater than before. But that is truly it. Going through the game in my head, and as I'm writing this review, there's nothing else I think I can critique right now. If all I can properly think of is one thing I would change about the narrative, I think that says a lot about how I feel about the rest of this. This review was written 3 days after I finished the game. I needed 3 days to process my feelings about this, as this wasn't just me playing through a game. It was an experience, and I implore everyone watching this to have it. This is the template that Western devs need to start following. I don't mean by copying the combat system or narrative beats, but by the spirit with which it was made. In a world full of copy and pasted AI generated slop, I can occasionally feel like my interest in gaming wanes. But then something will reignite that spark, and I remember why I love games so much. I remember what games have done, what they do, and what they can do better than any movie or novel, and that be a platform to tell stories. In the end, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 has solidified itself in my mind as one of the all-time greats. A game that is deserving of cleaning up at the 2025 VGAs. A testament to what can be achieved better than any corporate juggernaut. And it was done by a small, cash-strapped team that had a creative vision, and they saw it through. Unburdened by any shackle or expectation, because they did what they truly believed in, and they have created something truly special. Who would have thought that a team of 30 ex-Ubisoft devs, a SoundCloud composer, and a former private equity investor could create one of the best video games I have ever had the fortune to play.
Clair obscur, troublerature, clair obscur, guardé aux peintures.